Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. On the show this evening, we have a stack load of rugby topics to go through, including obviously the Silver Lake issue with New Zealand Rugby and the New Zealand Rugby Players Association. We'll be having a chat about potential new sponsor for the All Blacks jerseys. We're having a talk about attacking systems, and luckily I've actually got a coach on today who knows about this kind of stuff rather than just my opinion on the sidelines. We'll have a talk about some of the news, and obviously Trans-Tasman travel bubbles. Boy, that is a mouthful. Will be part of the conversation as well. And joining me to go through all of that, I've got Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. I hope everyone had a great Easter. I hope the Easter Bunny visited you. You had heaps of chocolates, successful Easter egg hunts. Hopefully you didn't indulge too much. But yeah, great weekend. Thank you. And I trust everyone is well. Trust everyone is safe. Very, very excited about Triple TB, the Trans-Tasman Travel Bubble.
Wow. And also Stephen Harris. Stephen, we have a new Triple T. We don't just have, he's not just a scrum half anymore.
Yeah, it makes a bit of a change, guys. Hey, listen, great to be on the show once again. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM.
And so, as I have got Boa, actually, no, let's just go through a couple of news items to at the top of the show before we get into our long discussions. Unfortunately, Sam Cane has a pectoral injury and will be out for the rest of Super Rugby Aotearoa. A real shame for the All Blacks captain there. And it will also be missing the initial All Blacks test matches. So Boa and Stephen, who do you think comes in? Who think wears the number 7 jersey for the All Blacks, and who would be the captain as well?
Well, I have to say I'm a bit biased. I'm a true blues man. So Dalton Papali'i, and also his form in the recent couple of weeks has been outstanding. I think he's clear-cut front runner. And also what I like about him is he brings that element of versatility and physicality, which is something we've strangely lacked at number 7 for the ABs, more so in attack than defense. So for me, Papali'i, a very clear top pick.
Wow, I guess one of the names I wouldn't have said clear, but Stephen.
Oh, listen, Dalton is definitely in the mix, I suppose. Artie would be in the mix, but that means you probably have to look around for a number 8. And I'm not too sure if the All Black selectors would want to go down that path, although Nocturnal Rights probably agrees with me on that respect. But if you look around at the current 7s that are putting their hand up at this very minute, yeah, Dalton Papali'i springs to mind. His form has been pretty consistent throughout Super Rugby, and that's sort of even before he just was away for a couple of weeks with injury. He's been consistent, and I just like the fact that he is physical, and as Boy said, he carries really well. He's a really good carrier of the ball, and he gets his fair share of turnovers as well. Yeah, I think he's in the mix, and yeah, you'd have to say I'm biased as well. I'd be looking at Dalton Papali'i.
So also the Artie Severe is the obvious. I think is the obvious one, but then as you say, that does require a reshuffle and potentially somebody coming in. Well, and definitely somebody coming in at 8 if that happens in there. And I guess it comes down to what do you want from your loose trio. Nocturnal Rights have a big athletic number 8, but they're looking at having a big athletic number 6 in someone like Akira Ioane, who did very well last year, or Shannon Frizzell. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It's about, and the back row is always about balance, folks. It's not necessarily about a number 7 has to do this, a 6 has to do that, and an 8 has to do that. It's about getting the balance between those 3 players. Talking about available people then, and Tony Brown has said that the 6 that was stood down last weekend for the Highlanders are all back in contention for this weekend. Then having that one week off is considered to be sufficient punishment. Boys, are you happy with that, or do you do you think some repeat offenders should potentially have spent a longer amount of steps stand down, or do you think 1 week for all 6 treat them equally is the right way forward?
Yeah, look, 1 week, clearly sent a good message. And Tony's the sort of guy, from a coaching point of view, is pretty strong on the culture. But look, the wonderful thing is the Highlanders played far better rugby and upset the Crusaders at Christchurch. So this now throws up a dilemma. Why change a winning formula? And for me, the biggest difference from a playing point of view or a technical perspective was Josh Giovanni. Now, this kid is the worst tackler in the Super Rugby Aotearoa competition. He just can't tackle. He just stands up and leans on to people, hoping that a coat hanger would stick. So you take that out of the equation. You had a guy in Mitch Hunt filling those boots. It re-energized the whole thing. It just goes to show when you change the status quo and when you take out players who have this attitude of, yep, we're an incumbent, we're a shoe-in, you got to rattle the cage. You got to disrupt that line of thinking. So, yeah, as far as punishments go, yeah, I think 1 week is probably more than adequate. But some of the information coming out is quite is concerning the right term. Loud house parties, and I mean, I get these guys want to have a good time, but in the modern age of professionalism, this sort of thing is from a high performance point of view not acceptable. So I think 1 week's fine. Messages got through, but if I was Tony Brown, I wouldn't change a thing going into this next week.
Yeah, Stephen, there's a big difference between being available and actually getting picked, isn't there?
Yeah, very, very much so. I actually think he might incorporate a couple of these guys back into this team. Michaeli too, especially, will basically offer them a lot more power at the back of the scrum and complement Frizzell as well. So I could see him coming back in, but they've got 2 home games coming up, and they're really important games because those 2 wins over these next 2 weeks against the Chiefs and the Blues puts them in a real prime position to actually make that final. So I still think he will bring some of this personnel back into the team. Whilst there were guys that did reasonably well, Scott Gregory probably played his best game for the Highlanders and those Highlanders in that jersey. I still think he's going to pull some of these guys back in.
Yeah, I think some will come back in, and I think it's also the right thing to do, because otherwise there might be a feeling within the camp that whilst he's saying that there's only been punished for 1 week, perhaps he is adding extra punishment. And so I think reintegrating them into the squad, in matchday squad, is important there. On that one.
Paul, I was going to say, just remember on the night they implemented a very, very good game plan. Especially driven by Mitch Hunt. He's one guy that probably on form shouldn't lose his place, and I agree with Boa there. With Ioane's a good young player, but at the moment you put the guy in there who's in hot form, and Mitch Hunt's performance was absolutely fantastic. If there's any lessons to be learned out of what we saw last Friday night, if you're playing the Crusaders, play the long game. Don't put high kicks up from inside your 22 or just outside your 22, because they actually feel the high kicks really well. What the Highlanders did really well was put longer kicks into their territory, force them to play back into the territory. They were able to put enough heat on and break down and pick up penalties. So, some game plans will work for specific teams. But we all rate Tony Brown as a coach, and to implement a style of game plan, he'll also have to have the players that can implement that plan.
Yep, no, absolutely. As you say, I think Mitch Hunter's got himself the 10 jersey. Now, whether Josh Ioane comes in at 15 or off the bench, we'll have to just wait and see. But I expect him to be involved in the matchday squad somewhere on that one. Somebody who will not be involved this weekend, though, is unfortunately Thomas Manga Jensen, who has sadly broken his wrist. So he is out for the rest of the season as well. And Barra, you nodding there?
Yeah, massive loss. I thought, outstanding player. Some real silky, subtle skills. So just real bad luck, bad timing. But these things happen. And knowing the young man, he'll probably come off a lot stronger, work harder. But certainly someone who will be missed. And just adding to what Nocturnal was on the chat there saying, couldn't disagree more that Joshua Ioane is a great tackler. Well, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree, Nocturnal. Joshua, if you look at the amount of missed tackles and the type of tackles he's missed, he's got very, very, very poor tackle technique. In fact, I was going over some workshops, and this is nothing personal. I did pull out some video footage on how not to tackle, and guess who featured the most?
Yeah.
Joshua Ioane.
Oh, dearie me. So that's those are the most sort of news articles that I can think of. I guess in the other news ones, Stephen, the North Harbour Club competition has kicked off, hasn't it? You were there at the weekend, so I guess in news, club rugby is on the way back.
Yes, it is, and boy, Takapuna, they put a marker in the sand straight away with a very, very good victory, 52 points to 15, after they led by 26 points to 8. I'm speaking to their coaches. They had a very, very good off season, and it very much showed. And it's going to take a really, really good side to knock over Takapuna in this year's competition. Of course, I'll just quickly go through the rest of the results in the first round. Obviously, Takapuna beat East Coast Bays 52-15. North Shore, the other team who will be well and truly in contention, 44 over Glenfield 12. Now, Glenfield haven't had a senior team in the competition, or they didn't have a senior team in the competition last year, and I don't think they had a senior team in the competition the year before. So great to see them back. North Cape 15, Mahurangi 17, as expected. A real close one for the Battle of the West between Kumu and Massey. Kumu coming out on top, 18 points to 14. And in our final game, North Harbour Marist with somewhat of an upset over Silverdale, 17 points to 12. So a couple of blowouts, but in between then some very, very close scores. Paul, of course, Northland Premier Rugby also started last week, or the second round, beg your pardon. We saw some interesting results on the weekend. Would have loved to have got up there, but they were either played on Thursday night or on the Friday. Just quickly go through those results. Ngati Hene Moerewe United Kawakawa beat Hikurangi 17-13. Wellsford too good for Hora 34 points to 7. A real tight one between last year's beaten finalists Mid Northern and Old Boys, but Old Boys Marist coming out on top 21-19. And the other results from Friday, these two games played on Friday, Kamo 21, Western Sharks 14. And finally, last year's champions, Waipu, were held to 24 all by Kiri. So that pretty much wraps up club rugby in North Harbour and North, and of course the Auckland club competition starts this weekend.
So, folks, what I will endeavour to do from this week onwards is to have the tables and results as a graphic, and we'll have a club rugby section every week looking at how, particularly the top north of the North Island goes, as that's where we live, and those are the games we get to, so we can give you a bit more colour around those. Stephen will be out and about around various clubs doing post-match reactions. Boa will be no doubt at all of the Manukau Rovers games, and I will be at at least Thames Valley's games, and hopefully some others as well, with as I'm helping out with Waihi Rugby Club this season. So all of us are club rugby men here on the show. And one of the things I saw on Twitter was a claim that said that New Zealand Rugby were happy about that participation numbers had gone up. Now, my experience is from hearing around different clubs is not so positive, in that I know various clubs in the Thames Valley region either are not putting out a Prem A team or aren't even putting out a team at all in senior men's rugby. Thinking of Tairua, for example, who were champions, I think, two or three seasons ago now. So I guess, boys, with your experience travelling around and what you're hearing on the ground, are you seeing participation numbers? Are you hearing about participation numbers being up in club rugby? Because I say I'm seeing the opposite of that round this area.
Look, I can't speak about other unions, but the Auckland circuit, and especially my own club, we don't have under 21s this year. The reason is there's not enough numbers, and that's reasonably concerning, because given that we are one of the biggest catchment areas in South Auckland, we can't field 21s. But then if you look at suburbs out west, they've got two teams in their 21. So I think Paul and Steve, the important thing here is we have to actually look at the numbers and look at the numbers year on year and what the true empirical evidence is. You can't just go on hearsay or what you feel or look at one club. So I'd be really interested to see. But based on what I'm seeing, I would agree with you. It certainly looks like the participation numbers are down. However, the women's game is certainly thriving. Wherever I go, I can see significant numbers coming through. But again, I'd like to see the registered number of players so we can get a true indication and a scientific rationale about which way we are trending.
And to be fair, I think Waihi, I don't think they've had a women's team before, but are looking at putting a women's team in this year. So yes, I can see that from that point of view. Yes. Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, Paul, I was about to say, like Boa, where are they getting these numbers from? Are they is it versus last year's 2020 COVID numbers, where you probably would have expected there would have been quite a few teams down on last year, and they would have. I'm not even sure if you recall, I don't even think they went ahead with an under 21 competition. Of course, they had that end of year 21, zonal competition, shall we call it. So any numbers based versus last year, they're definitely going to be up on last year. So yeah, I think to get a more realistic would be probably 2021 v 2022 would give you a more realistic look. But I do agree with the numbers on the women's game, and a lot of that comes through the Condor. When we see the Condor sevens at the end of the year, secondary school sevens, we see a lot of young females, especially coming through that rugby. We had a great conversation too with a couple of girls from the Auckland team, Grace Kukutai and also Shannon Leota. And it was fantastic to talk to these young girls about their experience and how they actually started in rugby. It was fantastic to hear. I should have actually had the camera on at the time, Paul.
That would have been good. Now we're going to move on to some of the questions that we've had through Twitter. I put a post out earlier today asking people for questions on Twitter. Also, if you have any questions that you'd like us to deal with here or cover at news on the DrivingMaul show, you can email me, paul@nzsportradio.com, and I'll include them in, I'll take the best ones and include them in the show. So Stefan Minton, I'm sorry if I've got your surname wrong, Minton. Stefan asks, rugby attack systems, why are some teams so hooked on 1-3-3-1 or 1-2-3-2 formations when it negates the strengths of the players in their squad? And I guess this also comes off the back of what Wayne Smith was saying on the breakdown the other week about how the pods are not leading, the people that coaches are seeming very married to this pod structure that doesn't allow for continuity of possession without a ruck. So Boa, as our resident coach here, what's your thoughts on why teams are hooked on 1-3-3-1 or on this 1-2-3-2 system?
Very, very simple explanation. Majority of teams and coaches, it's a comfort zone. They hug this whole system. To me, it's just boring, predictable. It's like going to McDonald's. You're not prepared to do something funky for dinner and cook something cool. You just go to the drive-through and say, "Can I have blah 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 with some fries? Let's upsize it." And just because everyone else is doing it, especially at high performance. And the Wallabies of the early 2000s, they actually really kickstarted this. It's very robotic. It's very, very predictable. And frankly, it's boring. Gone are the days where teams would actually create strike moves from recycled possession, 1-2 phases out. Those days are gone. It's very, very predictable. 1-3-3-1, 1-4-4-1, 2-3-3-2. It's just, And frankly speaking, I've been in a lot of classroom sessions. Even I'm talking Premier club grade level. We try to explain 1-3-3-1, and some of these players they look at you and they think, "What the hell are you talking about?" So it's look, we just have to move away from this predictability. It's just really boring, and it's actually ruining the game. The best example I can give you where success of moving away from this is the recent resurgence with France, what they did in the Six Nations. They didn't play this pattern. They just played attack rugby, offload after offload, and they looked to do strike moves off the very first phase. So to answer the question, it's a bit of comfort. There is actually a scientific theory in management science called mimetic isomorphism. I'll say it again, mimetic isomorphism. So everyone morphs and mimics what the leaders of the industry do. So somewhere along the line, a grand team came along and said, let's do 1-3-3-1. So everyone, like sheep, they follow it. And it's kind of like, how lawyers, when you go to meet a lawyer at top of the street, everyone's in black with a white shirt and black tie. They talk the same lingo. They got the same credit card, business card. And you go to see another lawyer 2 blocks down. They look exactly the same. So it's just try and temper down the unpredictability, and everyone wants to sort of kind of copy what everyone else is doing. And it's like I said, driving through McDonald's and not actually wanting to go and cook something funky for dinner. I hope that makes sense.
That does. Like I say, look, as you can see, we're not dressed like Sky Sports. We're deliberately not being the McDonald's version of your rugby punditry, are we, Stephen?
Exactly. Well, I reckon you piece that together absolutely brilliantly. But more importantly, using the pod system, you do make players robotic, and you take the instinctiveness away from the players, and that is to me that's not a good thing. It actually, how can I say? It takes, you see these players that are multi-skilled, who can instinctively do things, and sometimes you'll watch these players go throughout their career, and they're almost too scared to actually do it. They might have a fantastic rugby brains. I've seen a little bit of instinctiveness from one player, if I can use an example, but he's not a forward, and that's Folau Fakatava. Boy, he's got instinct, and he's not afraid to use it. Probably about, I was a bit unsure of him at the very, very start of the season, but he's got that instinctiveness. But if you look around at a lot of the forwards, boy, there's a real robot theme about them. Now, you can be like robots, but we all understand how machines grind. There has to be accuracy with the machine, because if it's not accurate, it falls down.
Yeah, well, a really good example of someone who is not this whole McDonald's version of rugby was one of my mentors, the late great George Simpkin. Now, George was a pioneer and innovator in rugby. He was the architect of the Hong Kong Sevens. He was a guy who actually encouraged players to utilize the skills they've been taught and be free thinkers, attack and play what's in front of you. Don't be predictable and enjoy the game. So I think that element has been taken out by and large, because this whole, trying to do this transformer McDonald version of high performance rugby. And frankly speaking, it's very, very boring. It's very predictable. And from a defensive point of view, it's very easy to read, and it actually takes away some of your core competences, what I would call your X factor skills, especially out wide. When you have guys who, are raring to run out wide, all you're doing is just setting up pods midfield. It's just, to me, it's just brainless rugby.
And yet the counter argument would be that, look, because defences have become so suffocating and so well drilled, is that we have to have a more systematic and well drilled attack to take that on, which is just that's kind of just to play devil's advocate there. And I guess it is part of the legalization of coachings, whereas in league you have it's not as rigid as, say, American football, but you have a fairly standard platform to which you base all your attacks off. Whereas with rugby union, it's much more fluid than that. There are different options across the pitch, and trying to put a rigid approach into a fluid situation, you're going to end up with situations where it doesn't work. Interesting point here about Nocturnal Rights. He says, that's the crazy talk of 2 playmakers was silly to me. In the past, every back was a playmaker. Now, I think he's over-egging it a little bit there, but I get what he's saying. I get where he's coming from.
I can just add something to Nocturnal, to why they actually do that. Having 2 playmakers just creates a lot of doubt for the defence, whether you've got a man standing to the left or the right. It just basically keeps the defence on notice more than anything else. And if those guys are multi-skilled and they can identify opportunities, that's the whole plan. when it works well, it can be very, very efficient. Unfortunately, it's something that the All Blacks pretty much trialed for a couple of years, and obviously based on results, you have to say there was very, very limited. It was limited in terms of its success.
Yeah, look, guys, another, just jumping in quickly, a really good example of how not to play this robotic McDonald's version of rugby is, you recall the Brumbies, ACT Brumbies, late 90s and early 2000s, where the pairing of George Gregan and the great David Knox. Every time they had a set play, a set piece, a scrum or a line-out, they'd call a set move, and they'd attack from depth, and you had runners running from all over the show. It was like, geometry 101, angles all over the place. And also, if you go back and look at some of the best strike moves, if you recall that All Black strike move, it was called Lotto Numbers, where you had all these multiple angles and players running outside. And I think it was Christian Cullen. This was an Athletic Park in Wellington when they played the Wallabies. They scored that amazing try. So all that sort of exciting stuff at the highest level, unfortunately, has been taken away. It's been replaced by what I would call the X Factor counter kick, counter attack. So teams would kick at opponents, and they'd get the opponents to kick back, and they would try and create some kind of counter attack, which is exciting, don't get me wrong. But I would much rather see teams move away from this very predictable transformer like rugby and actually start playing some entertaining, fast, open-paced rugby, much like what France did this year in the Six Nations.
Yeah, I think a great exponent of that counter-attack kick rugby was with the Highlanders, with Ben Smith back there, with clearly the idea being that if you can get a kick up and you can retain, sort of catch your own kick, you end up with broken field play. And it was a quick way of creating broken field play and not having a set defence to play against. But it's and it is exciting when it comes off, but it's a matter of balance, isn't it? We do like to see it. It is good, but we want to have it. If that's your only tactic, and we see constantly raining bombs, then it's less fun as well. So there we go. Stefan, there's your answer as to around the coaching side of things. Okay, then I think I can hold off no longer with Silver Lake time and the fun and games that is going on around that one. Scotty Stevenson, not someone that I'm a particular fan of, I'll be honest, but he did make a good point on Twitter when someone was talking about the Silver Lake thing, and he says, one of the big questions is who leaked a 2-month-old letter. And if we were talking about the PR battle that's happening at the moment, he said, "Yeah, have a look at that first." And yes, it's very true. But some of the things that have come out recently around this one, in addition to what we talked about last week, so I'm not going to rehash everything we talked about, but the players. One of the reasons that there is apparently disruption between the Players Association and New Zealand Rugby is that New Zealand Rugby is asking the Players Association to take a cut in the amount of revenue that gets paid to players, and the from I think it's 35 or 38 something like that percent down to 30%, with the argument being that because the whole pot will increase in size with the Silver Lake investment, how they'll grow all the money income, that actually there'll be more money for the players rather than less, even though they take a lower percentage. Now the players, unsurprisingly, are going, well, hang on, what if that doesn't grow like you say? Then you're basically asking us to take a pay cut. So that's one of the reasons that they've had to bring in mediators around that. We've had then JK weighed in, and I must admit, JK is becoming one of my least favourite pundits during this. Who, as Simon Hughes says, I'm wondering what business is it of John Kirwin insisting who to be in leadership of the Players Union. John Kirwin is towing very much of a. He sounded like a rugby, New Zealand rugby, spokesperson in disguise at the moment, with some of the comments he's made, such as previously, oh, you should just trust the people of New Zealand Rugby, the players should just trust them to do the right thing. So, no, not, I'm not so sure about that one. But Bill, what do you think about this reduction? I guess how the conversation is going between New Zealand Rugby and the Players Association.
Yeah, look, I think the art of negotiation is being put to test here. It's very easy to take the easy route and say, no, look, I want a bigger share. I want a lion's share of guaranteed earnings. Or you could go the other way and actually be quite adventurous and be part of this, which clearly the Players Association are not willing to do, is where you take a upfront pay cut, but negotiate a better deal where you get a percentage of the TV revenue, much like what the UFC does with their pay-per-view model. So that then forces the players to be a key stakeholder when it comes to promoting. And of course, it's a performance-driven model, because end of the day, if the players step up their game and if there's more entertainment on the field, more, they perform more consistently and win bigger. And once Silver Lake's injection, because they're going to bring a lot of expertise as far as broadcasters, etc., are concerned. And there's no doubt they will grow this and they will spread the game. So thereby, that gives the players an opportunity to tap in to that percentage of earnings soon as the TV revenue grows in. So I think rather than take a very conservative approach, but I get what the players are on about. But again, you got to change with the times. And if you really...
To be fair, look, that's how it works at the moment. That they get 30. The New Zealand Rugby has to spend, I can't remember, it's 35 or 38% of their revenue on players. They have to. That's what the current deal is. And so hence, the higher the revenue, the more money the players get. What New Zealand Rugby are asking for is that the players have that reduced down to 30%. And they're saying that as part of the Silver Lake deal, they will grow revenues so that 30% of this big pot, or this bigger pot, is more than the 38% of the current pot. Now, the players turn around going, how do we know the pot's actually going to grow? I guess that's so.
Yeah, so that really comes down to the transparency of information and actually looking at what lies ahead. So that's why I say the players have to then make themselves a very key stakeholder of this very business model. So that would mean that the negotiations, how they negotiate, what they negotiate on, and maybe who negotiates on their behalf. They might have to get people who have more professional savvy nous in such negotiations to the table. So, there's going to be a lot of change. It's not going to please everyone. But if I was in their position, which I'm not, that is the approach I would take. It's probably not the most popular and most liked way of doing it. But I think medium to long term, the players will end up making far more revenue than they ever will.
Stephen, your thoughts on how those conversations are going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I discussed it last week. I think there was a lot of gesticulating going on by various parties, and I've read the Scotty Stevenson tweet as well, and it pretty much sums it up. But also, playing its way in the background as well. Apparently the All Black jersey might be taken over as well, Paul. There's a report coming out of L'Equipe and Midi Olympic that New Zealand Rugby is also negotiating with a French construction materials company that's Ultrad to replace AIG as the next jersey sponsor.
We'll talk about that one in a second.
But it sort of leads back into where they're sort of driving at. They obviously got a hand in a couple of pies at the minute, Paul. I personally, I just think there's a lot at play here at the minute. Obviously the unions are having their say. The Rugby Players Association are having their say, and you kind of wonder if there's information being leaked as well, guys, by the rugby union themselves.
Well, hang on. I think the information being leaked by both sides to their favourite reporters to try and win the PR battle. So I wouldn't point fingers at one side now. I'd point fingers at everybody. I guess something around the Silver Lake thing. Nocturnal Rights says, what will Silver Lake actually do with New Zealand Rugby? Well, that's all confidential until they get. I mean, they're not going to tell everything and say, "Hey, we do all of this. Here you go." Oh, what do you mean you're not going to take our money? You're just going to do what we said we're going to do. So there's so there'll be an element of that. So some of that stuff that's definitely not in the public domain currently. So we don't know what they will do, but they basically said they will improve the marketing and therefore increase the revenues. And they have been very good at doing that with other sports in other areas.
So, Paul, just to quickly reiterate an answer to that, what they're going to do is they're going to put 20% up, and for that 20%, they will have revenue targets, what's what we call return on investment. So that it's a straightforward transaction, and one side of it, they will be like absolute great white sharks. They will want to maximize their revenue in the least possible time. The how they're going to do it is this whole cloak and dagger confidential stuff where we don't know. So I'm just hoping and praying purely from a grassroots and innovation point of view. I really hope that there is significant funding pumped into grassroots as well as R&D. By R&D, I mean, getting more volunteers, administrators in the grassroots game, coaches and players upskilled and trained up so that they can transition into the professional sport a lot better. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm very positive about this deal. The reality is the sport can't continue in the same governance it shows, and this has just caused a lot of disruption. And having worked with the big boy as well as all the little brothers right around the country over the last couple of years, trying to get my safe tackle framework through, I can say change has to happen. It has to happen. Otherwise, it's just going to drive others. It's just going to drive everyone nuts. And yeah, I mean, 10 years from now, the game will significantly suffer financially unless there is a serious change in financial and commercial direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does. We do require change. The only question is how. So Jordan puts in there, guys, thoughts on Razor's comment about how the Silver Lake deal could determine the decision of where his coaching future is headed. Very nervous times for rugby. Now, I guess what you're hearing from us now is our discussion around that. I mean, as Stephen says, there's a lots of moving parts. We've got brand new TV contracts that came into effect at the beginning of the year, but also have had to be renegotiated due to COVID. We've got the AIG sponsorship around the jersey coming up. Finishes at the end of this year. We've just had announcement around new sponsors for the NPC Farah Palmer Cup Heartland Championship, as well as this Silver Lake thing. So I think if you could, pretty much every single revenue stream that New Zealand Rugby has coming in is changing in around about a 12 to 18 month period. So yes, this is a big state of change that we're not likely to see again for another decade from a financial point of view. This is the biggest piece because I'd say pretty much every single commercial contract it has been up for renewal in this window. And you've got a brand new CEO arriving during that. You've had a CEO who, the TV revenue started at the beginning of last year, but even so, over a 2-year period, you're ending up with basically all of these things changing. Now the next one is the jersey and the Altarad option. Now geez, of all the names to get involved with, Altarad should come with flashing warning lights of danger all over it. Here is a guy who was detained for 24 hours along with Bernard Laporte, or over 24 hours along with Bernard Laporte, only last year around questioning around rugby corruption. Is Mr. Altarad, who happens to own Altarad Group, funnily enough. So why they're even talking to him blows my mind, if they are, because it's only come from his side. I mean, of all seriously, yes, he is a very rich man, but he is so deep in French rugby as the owner of Montpellier, thank you. I knew you were with an M. His name is already on the front of the French national jersey as well. I mean, Altrad is to me is a name is something that you should not be talking to because, well, yeah, he is he's so. He is also part of the funding behind France winning the next Rugby World Cup, which, let's be honest, ended up with all sorts of question marks around how they did their bidding process against South Africa as well. So I see amber lights flashing all over the place here, Stephen.
You know what? Just take the money. Take it where it if he wants to give us 30 million, well, hey, then so be it.
Well, I have to say, guys, 30 million. Okay, so it's a drop in the ocean for this guy. Mohamed Altrad, I think it was 2015 or 2016, Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually purchased an award for himself, but hey, that's a different story. Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, yeah, this is interesting situation, guys. 30 mil for 2 years to have Altrad, one of the biggest building supplies companies in the European Union. We're talking a multi-billion dollar organization, multi-billion euro organization. Beg your pardon. Owner of Montpellier, very, 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 very passionate about rugby, and he likes to win. He will win pretty much at any cost. So, yeah, is that the culture where we're sort of inviting in? So, look, you can look at this in different angles. But, yeah, as Mr. S. Harris there said, take the money.
In all seriousness, though, guys, you have a funny feeling there's definitely an angle here. He obviously owns Montpellier. He's passionate about that particular club. And, I personally think it's just his way of maybe looking for a more direct route to players as well. So there'll be a bit of that involved, no doubt. Yeah, it's a dicey one, but listen, we're in a climate where if opportunities are out there, you may just have to take them at the end of the day. Don't necessarily agree with it, but hey,
this one is well, okay. Some money just isn't worth touching, and in my mind, this is one of them. To be blunt, it's $1 million less than per year than this is we're talking US dollars here now, rather than New Zealand dollars, but it's $1 million US dollars less than AIG were paying in the past decade. He has come out and said that look, the rugby financial landscape is not what it used to be, and things aren't worth what they used to be. So that's interesting. He's also mentioned that he perhaps doesn't like all the strings that are attached to the putting his name on the All Blacks jersey, and we know that with AIG, and I know someone says in the chat that AIG is just as dubious. No, not necessarily. They don't have an individual at the top that pulls things in the same way as an Altrad does. But we know that, look, for the All Blacks jersey, they don't have the box around AIG. It's relatively small logo on the front, etc. So I can see him not being happy, being constrained by that. And as much as AIG, most people might not like AIG, I think they were respectful of the jersey and understood how if they were going to be accepted on the jersey, which I think at the end they were, they had to approach it with that kind of way, with that kind of mentality. As you say, Altrad's a winner who doesn't like to make compromises like that, Bella.
Well, simple solution. If I had 30 million, which I don't, set tackle framework right across, the game would be much safer. Yeah, what can I say? Lesser concussions, lesser head knocks. World Rugby won't get sued with a class action suite. And it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? No, I haven't got the baggage Mohamed Altrad has. What can I say?
And you also don't, yeah, but yes, brilliant. An All Blacks jersey with a yellow line across at the nipple height ish to indicate where the tackle line is. Oh, I can see how traditionalists would be up in arms over that, with having such a glaring line on or anything.
But for 30 million, I'm sure they would all nod and say, yeah, it's the greatest thing ever. We're trying to make the game safer, lesser concussions. Why didn't we do this earlier? Well, simple fact is there wasn't 30 million in the kitty, but there is now. So I think that's going to be the key feature. So in all seriousness, yeah, look, I can eventually see Altrad going right across the All Black jersey. Is it a good thing or bad thing? People will argue saying yes or no. But I don't know. I just feel there's a sense of inevitability about this, and there would be some far deeper ramifications as well. But only time will tell.
The All Blacks is one of the strongest brands in sport globally. Okay, they will have suitors, and I think that they can find somebody else other than Altrad to go on there who is a safer name on there for the same amount of money, personally. So yeah, I've seen this come out in the press in France from him. So clearly he's looking at adding a bit of pressure to try and make it happen, I think. Yeah, to me, not a good move for that one. For me, another sponsor who has come in, and I'm going to be doing a supporters special now. If you about this is Bunnings. If you look at Bunnings, an Australian company coming in to be the sponsor of a New Zealand institution, and what's the first thing they do is they revert back to the original name of NPC, right? So again, they're approaching it with respect to the tournament because they know that if they come in and call it the Bunnings Cup, that everyone's going to go, wow, the Australians are taking over our cup, our thing, and it just would not go down well. So that's how a sponsor should approach it. I think is the way that AIG has done and the way that Bunnings are doing it, rather than the way that I would imagine Altrad would do. So yeah. Yes, no? Of course, let me go.
I agree. NPC. I mean, look, whenever we've had conversations, I struggle to actually use the term Mitre 10 Cup. I'm very old school. I just keep reverting to the term NPC, National Provincial Championship. So I think Bunnings will be very smart about this. I mean, they've got some very clever cookies, and if you look at them as a company year on year, they've just grown tremendously. The revenue just keeps flooding in. So masterstroke on their part, and I have to say I feel a little bit sorry for Mitre 10. But hey, that's the world we live in. So love it. Bring back the NPC.
I agree with you about the NPC. I don't agree. I don't think Bunnings was a good choice by New Zealand Rugby. But I'd say you'll hear all that in a supporter special that's coming out soon. Now you can become a supporter of New Zealand Sports Radio and help us produce this content for you, and also, as I say, get access to those exclusive videos and articles over at patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. If you're listening on the old podcast, check out the podcast notes. There's a link in there for you to become a supporter as well. Cool. So we've done that. What are your thoughts on names on the back of jerseys? Like we saw the I think it was the Force do at the weekend. Personally, it's something we've seen in Europe, in the English competition, and I like it. I like seeing the names on the back of the jersey because, to me, well, it helps identification, helps fans and supporters become more attached to players. Because if you recognise them, you become more attached to them. And to me, I'm all for putting names on the back of jerseys. And Stephen takes himself off mute, he'll be able to talk.
Absolutely, I fully agree, Paul. And also from a commentary point of view, it's a lot easier. Unless you're Keith Quinn, you're not going to know all the names in the correct pronunciation. So especially with the Pacific Island names, I think the more it's a visual cue as well for the spectators, much like my safe tackle framework. Sorry, I had to put that in. So I think I'm all for names. We've actually seen in other sports where they actually have their pet name or nickname on the back of their playing shirt, which again, is a great way to connect with the fans, and it's a really nice way to bring more new punters into the sport, because there's that whole casual, friendly nature about it. So I'm all for it. Hopefully it takes off, and hopefully too many of these traditionalists in the institution, the big, great institution, don't have too much to bitch and moan about it.
Okay, I'm going to go the other way, guys. And I'll explain my reasons.
Here comes the bitch and moan.
And I'll explain my reasons why. Listen, those jerseys, like when you give it an international jersey or a provincial jersey, you're only the custodian of that jersey while you're in it. It's for anybody to basically run with and grab during their career. So it kind of, for me, it just stays a little bit sacred. It's anybody's jersey. Like, we can all think of the great players that have either worn an All Black jersey or a Blues jersey or whatever, even for specific clubs. But I just like the fact that, when you put that jersey on, you're only holding on to it or wearing it for an extended period of time until somebody else gets to wear it. I can understand all the commercial reasons that you guys have mentioned before, but hey, that's me.
No, they're very, very difficult to argue against that, Steve. And I fully agree with that. It's sacred. No one owns or leases. It's just a very short. It's a privilege to wear that number, especially if you're incumbent or incoming All Black. So I completely understand that, and it's a point very hard to I couldn't agree. I couldn't argue against that very point.
It's
unless you're Colin Meads, of course, where they've retired his club number.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean to say, how often I've seen like Barcelona soccer shirts around, and it's got somebody's wearing a shirt with Messi's name on it. For me, it's just a bit. It's a little bit tacky. Although I understand with football and the commercial reasons and plays that go with it. But I mean to say, there's just those certain values that we've got in rugby that I'd like to see stay.
Yeah, to me, look, the number would stay the same, but the name would change as different players get selected. Is how it works in the UK at the moment. And to me, it's not so much about the commercial side, but more about the recognition side by the fans and by the community, by the commentators. But fine. Yeah, no, I get your point on that one. So then, Triple TB or Trans-Tasman Travel Bubble, and what does it mean for rugby? Now, what does it mean for Rugby League? Well, join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. for the Standoff Show when Boa and Richie will talk about, not Boa, Richie, Brad and Richie will talk about the impact to NRL. And then also join us at the Standoff Show. And join us at 9 p.m. for the Knicks newsletter where Connor and I've gone blank as to the rest of them there. Dan will also discuss it from a Phoenix point of view as well. But tonight, you use a marker pen rather than having the jersey printed. You get to write your name on at the end. That reminds me of when Sonny Williams put tape across the bank.
BNZ. That's right. Yeah. The bank which pays a whole 3.8% interest back then.
But from a rugby point of view, what does the Trans-Tasman Travel Bubble mean? And I think pretty simple, guys. That the Trans-Tasman Super Rugby Trans-Tasman can actually happen.
It can, and I'm looking forward to the Kiwi sides absolutely thumping those sides. That's going to be the real highlight. But look, I think the timing couldn't be better, especially with this whole Silver Lake thing happening and all the commercialism which is being discussed. And this will now give both unions an opportunity to look at getting other sides into the country, keeping them in a biological bubble and working around all the restrictions so that we can actually get more countries playing each other in a controlled environment. So I think it's fantastic. And frankly speaking, it's long overdue.
Well, yes, I was trying to keep away from the political side as to when it should have been decided and how it should be decided and whether it's
I just had to say that.
And all that kind of stuff. We'll leave that to other political and travel podcasts. But from what point again, Trans-Tasman is going to happen, but also, as Boa makes the point there, it does also mean the Rugby Championship can go ahead as well. South Africa can come over, as can Argentina. They can come over, settle down in both Australia and New Zealand for 6 weeks worth of games, plus probably a couple of weeks of quarantine for them to get in. But they can come and stay for a couple of months, play all those games in that bubble, and it work out. And they don't even have to bubble. It's not like when I'm trying to think, it was Pakistan or was it West Indies went to England to play England at cricket, and they weren't allowed to leave the hotel that was attached to the cricket ground. Now, look, the teams will have perfect freedom, as well as the ability to travel backwards and forwards. So, yeah, look, also the Rugby Championship will be able to go ahead. What I think they should also use it for is for the July test window, where you've got Fiji and Italy. I don't know who else is supposed to be playing the All Blacks, and also Australia. But again, there's an opportunity there for some extra games to be played between those teams if they fancy it as well. And I think it could be done.
We could have a reenactment of the 2002 game, Crusaders v Waratahs at Jade Stadium. Remember that 96 points to 19 hiding, which the Crusaders gave the Waratahs? We could very well reenact that this year if that game goes ahead.
Sorry, I got distracted by comments in the chat there, Boa. My bad.
That's okay.
Around that one. Yes, Nocturne Right says it had a mini World Cup feeling or something. Yes, but that's what Australia suggested last year, and everyone went no thanks.
Paul, I was about to say, I think I was actually messaging you, but I hope Aaron doesn't have any family or friends in Wellington, because I don't think he'll ever be invited back ever again.
He does, by the way. Yes, or at least family-in-law, at the very least. So yes, is that one. So yeah, look, that's basically what Trans-Tasman bubble means. There is an element of risk though, folks, because look, both sides. So interestingly, Western Australia is not part of it. So whilst it is Australia, it's not all of Australia, which is interesting. So the Force will have to play all their home games away on that one. But I think it includes all of the rest of Australia apart from Western Australia, which is about half the country, isn't it? But most of it's desert, so who cares?
Well, that's very unfortunate for Western Australia, and may the Force be with them. And but that said, I don't think we're missing anything by not seeing the Force, because boy, I mean,
oh no, look, the Force will be involved. They just have to play their home games away from home in either Sydney or Melbourne.
Yeah, and of course it'll cut down the travel time significantly. I mean, flying to Perth. I remember the last time I flew to Perth. All I remember was, just flying over desert for hours on end. It's kind of like flying to Singapore. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a significant impact. And frankly, I can't really see the Force and the Waratahs and pretty much any of those Australian sides, beating any of the Kiwi sides.
The Dr. Rice asks, is that what Western Australia do? Is that the politicians have more control? Look, for political content, go and check out some other websites. We're not discussing. I'm not going to go down that route, but yes, Western Australia is not part of the travel bubble, from what I have seen. looking at their official West Australia website, not just relying on Twitter, folks. I know, because not everything that's said on Twitter is true. So be careful. But yeah, look, on a personal level, I think the Reds and the Brumbies will give most of the New Zealand side a run for their money. I don't think those will be one-sided contests, but I can't see them challenging the Blues or the Crusaders and probably the Blues, but they'll be able to give the Highlanders, the Hurricanes, and the Chiefs decent games in that one, I think. But Boa we'll have to wait and see on that one and discuss that when it happens. And the good thing is when it happens, not if it happens now, which is something that's nice to say. And hologram 2-pack says agrees. Yeah, the Brumbies could give the Chiefs a run, he thinks. Slowly wrapping things up then. Any news on the Lions tour progress? No, nothing apart from the last news we had was a couple of weeks ago saying that it's going to happen in South Africa. That the tour will go ahead as planned. But there was no announcement around what was going to happen to fans. And let's be honest, if you're going to travel to South Africa, then well, it'll be an interesting choice to make. I think is how I put it nicely on that one. So yeah, nothing else new there. Any final things we've not discussed that you guys want to have a quick chat about?
Well, a couple of Australian players, the names elude them, but significant trend. They seem to be committing their allegiance to Japan. So I think we'll see a bit of a trend there with some of the younger high-performance academy players wanting to play and be involved in Japan. A bit of a trend, I think, which should alarm Rugby Australia, because as things are, they are struggling to find quality numbers. So this is, maybe this is the beginning of an exodus. And also, if you look at the South Africans, the amount of Springboks who play in Europe now is tremendous. So we're going to see a lot of Springboks or South African-born players imported into most of these European sides. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, the makeup of player migration is going to be immense. And the face of world rugby is changing quite significantly. So be very interesting to see where all this goes, how some of the residency rules are further shaped. Is it going to have a further tweak? Are the players going to have a say? Are the Pacific Islands rugby going to have a further say? Because, they've been given a little bit, and now all of a sudden there's, more happening. And guys like Mohamed Altrad wanting to come get involved with New Zealand rugby. I wouldn't be surprised if half the future contracted Baby Blacks end up playing for France.
There you go. Here we go. There is a couple of young Aussies, as you say, have declared. So we're talking about Dylan Riley, and has declared his allegiance to the Brave Blossoms. He's apparently the third Australian-raised player to do that, including Jack Cornelson and also. And Ben Gunter, also other ones who are putting themselves forward for Japan instead of Australia. Now, I would say this is something that has been happening in Europe with Pacific Island players and also Australian players. Look at people like James Lowe playing for Ireland, for example. He went all the way through to the Chiefs and played for the Maori All Blacks before heading over there. So this is nothing new. I think the difference here is that this is probably these are the first players we're seeing it happen at this young age who haven't got, as far as we're aware, close ties with Japan, doing it with Japan. I think so basically Japan is now becoming an England, a France, an Ireland, a Scotland. It's an extra one of those doing that rather than necessarily being anything new, or Japan doing anything new that hasn't been done before. It's been done before, but mainly by European sides. So let's not start blaming or too much finger pointing at Japan on this one.
Not at all. I'm just stating the fact, and I think the interesting pattern is we will see more and more players from Manukau Rose and St. Kitts get imported to the to Australia and then, strangely enough, find their way in Japan. So watch out for that trend as well.
I think also another trend is also that I saw post Rugby World Cup was the previously you quite often saw your fly halves, wingers, etc. going, but after the last Rugby World Cup, locks were the big position in demand globally, and I think we're going to see that more and more. Is that locks are becoming much more will become much more the premium player within a team, purely because of the fact there are only so many people who are tall enough to be locks, and so the number of the number of locks available is going to be less than quite a lot of other positions. So, yeah, absolutely, I think we're going to see a change there in how in demand for different positions.
Yes, St. Ken's and King's College have no shortage of locks, so there you go.
Well, St. Ken's will just go and buy a couple of schools from down south.
Yeah, that's right. Aureli College, Mangere College. So there you go.
As far as I'm aware, that no, Joe Wheeler has not been contacted by Japanese Rugby to be a sideline commentator.
Now, he might have a shot based on what he did with Donald Trump's upcoming social media network as a moderator.
Look, and actually, okay, on this one, on a serious note, the fact that Joe Wheeler, by the looks of things, has got away with just putting out an apology tweet for what he did live on TV is disgusting. There should be much more, to my mind, there should be much more, some sort of disciplinary action. He should, a bit like the players got dropped for a game. He should have been dropped for a game or a weekend or two as well, to show that look, this kind of behaviour is not acceptable nowadays in this country. Sorry.
Paul, I have got one thing. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to show a piece of video. I don't know how well it will come through. Don't worry. It's just BT. It's from. I won't mention the channel, so they won't know who they are. Hopefully, you guys will be able to maybe see that, or it's a still.
Oh, Faf de Klerk.
Yeah, it's basically a still picture. I'll try and get the. There you go. You can just basically see it. There you go. Yeah, just
okay. So hang on. So before you go on, so for those of you who are listening on the podcast rather than watching the video, watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, basically Stephen has just shown basically the GIF of the tackle on Faf de Klerk at the back of a ruck.
Yeah. Yeah, I've looked at. I'm not sure what sort of category that you actually put it in, because if you I've watched that's just obviously the GIF or the grab. I've watched it in its entirety, and Faf de Klerk has his hands on the ball for a very, very long time. He could have cleared it straight away. If he cleared it straight away, he probably wouldn't have taken that hit. That's the first thing I've got to say. I suppose you probably put it in a sort of it's a clumsy looking tackle that's probably worth a penalty at the end of the day, but probably not enough for a yellow or red card sanction. But I think there probably should have been a penalty of sorts, because it is kind of dangerous. He's obviously got his legs well propped apart to either pick up and pass or kick. But the one thing you do notice on there, he takes a long time to clear the ball. He's got his hands on the ball, which makes him unfortunately open game.
Well, I know. Well, again, I've not taken a referee course recently or ever, to be honest, and I've not followed up on this one. But is the current ruling hands on the ball? Is the current ruling the ball has to be lifted off the ground that it comes into play?
Lifted off the ground. So under the current rules, I'll give an answer to both. So let's address Faf de Klerk. He did nothing wrong. There is no time limit. It's up to the referee. If he calls use it, then you have to use it. But then again, if you take 10 different referees when they say use it, and if you time it on a stopwatch, you will have 10 different time slots for 10 different referees. So for me, use it means use it straight away or lose it. And the clean out under the current framework, that's a red card. That is direct, forceful contact and impact, shoulder to the head. No question about it. So how the referees, the TMOs, the touch judges, everyone missed it is beyond me. So here's where genius comes in. Orange card.
Orange card.
There you go. I mean, I look, the reality is under the current rules, what I've just told you is what it is. So you can't really go and change any of that. So you have to make the call based on that. But, Steve, I get your point. And, there's got to be a little bit of common sense. So these are some of the areas which World Rugby really need to, come down on. Instead of treating the symptoms of the problem, get to the root cause. So if it's use it, you have to use it. If you don't use it, you lose it.
One thing I will say, there is a bit of history between these two players. They've had a crack at each other. When obviously Jake Ball's been playing for Wales and Faf de Klerk has been playing for South Africa. So I do wonder if there's a little bit more of a payment, because you probably, what's he probably an 18-stone guy landing on a guy who's probably no more than 75 kgs. It was designed to do a bit of damage.
And of course, I have to say, guys, there's a significant act of negligence on the part of the referees and the sanctioning rugby. There's a European Rugby Commission here, which is Faf de Klerk did not go out for an HIA. There was significant impact to the head. So this is the sort of rubbish. This is the sort of negligent behavior. The past players are actually trying to sue World Rugby by using a class action suit. So to throw a stat at you guys, the last 50 cards and penalties involving collisions or head contact, there were only 6 players who actually went out for an HIA, which is a staggering statistic.
Okay, so here we're talking about the player that the non-offending player, the player that's been offended, has
the victim.
The victim, yeah.
And clearly there was significant contact. So under the current rules, that's a red card, no question.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. So to me, I was like, well, look, he's as soon as he lifts the ball, he's fair game. If he's crouched down, how is he supposed to tackle him? He has significantly lowered his height. Therefore, if you just dive on top of him, there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, interesting how we can three people can read a situation very differently.
Yeah. So based on the current high tackle framework and contact and collision, then you have to follow the framework. So
you're allowed mitigating factors. So one of the mitigating factors is he has lowered himself pretty much to be head at ground level. But anyway,
was he cited?
No citing, nothing.
It's considered perfect. Yeah, it was considered perfectly acceptable what he did.
So personally, I would never pull out a red card, but that's just me. But under with the current set of laws, 9 times out of 10, that would have been a red card. There would have been a citation. So that's where I think the orange card comes in handy, saying, look, I think there's under the current framework, there is significant impact, but there's a bit of mitigation. I don't want to send players off for this. Let's say the judiciary sorted itself out. And all chances are, if you get a good lawyer, a Queen's Counsel, you can easily get off the charge as well. So there's that avenue in the professional game.
Cool. Has Will Jordan been cited? Not that I'm aware of. No. And neither has Karifi. Should he have got a red card on Saturday? No. That's he went through. I think they're pretty clear as to what was happening in those ones. So yeah. Sorry, Bill.
I have to say the best commercial value from all the sponsors in all of professional rugby are getting at the moment. It has to be Specsavers, because the amount of non-decisions, the non-citations. Surely, I mean, guys, think about it. Everywhere you go into a rugby club, it eventually goes to one stakeholder there. That's the referees and Specsavers. So yeah, what can I say?
And DP.
And DP. There you go. Very soon. Very soon to be replaced by Altrad.
Well, guys, thank you very much, Bella. Thank you very much, Stephen. We've overrun, but hey, it's been an absolute blast. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody who has joined us in the live chat. Yes, we will be using Offers Lawyer from now on. Thank you, everybody, and do join us next Tuesday at 8 p.m. for the Driving Maul Show.